In this video we drive to Somerset to try and find the world's smallest wader all the way from America, and we look for a really rare duck. This adventure started with a trip down south towards Somerset. Hey folks, we're back on one of our adventures, and this time in Somerset. So we've arrived, it's late on. We're here to try and find a couple of birds, one being a least sandpiper, which is a very rare wading bird. It would be really nice. That's about half an hour away from where we are now. We are going to nip to RSPB Greylake first though. There has been inconsistent sightings of a Baikal teal, which is an amazing duck that we have been lucky enough to see twice in the past, but would very much like to get on this year's list. So stick with us and we'll see you in the morning.
Night.
Night. The following morning we woke up to a very cold day. Morning folks, we're at RSPB Greylake and it is absolutely freezing. Somebody's shooting over there. Kaylee is still in the van, she's getting ready. I forgot to say last night that some really bad weather's coming in today, like snow, amber warnings for snow and such, so we're going to try and get as much in as we can today before the weather comes in. Although it wasn't quite light yet, I headed towards the first of two hides, joining another birder en route. Despite the cold weather, there was plenty of life around. We saw a flock of bearded tits. Unfortunately, it was too dark to get any footage of them. And a species I had trouble with at the end of last year, the merlin. Again, it was too dark to get footage, so I couldn't count them on the year list yet. This was a little frustrating as both species aren't the easiest to find. But as the light came up, I came across another species I had trouble with last year, the water rail. There wasn't just one of those here, there was multiple birds skating around on the ice. Just next to the hide there was a narrow stretch of water, and today that water was frozen, and the poor water rails were having to try and run from one side to the other. Apart from a little bit of slipping and sliding, admittedly these birds were doing remarkably well, and we were happy getting reasonably good views of this very shy species. We then went to sit in the hide, but the cold gave me another problem. Hey folks, so I've seen a couple of birds I couldn't get footage of because of the light and such, like a barn owl and those bearded tits. There's also a merlin sat on the bank reasonably in front of us. The only problem I've got at the moment is it's so cold my camera's playing up. It's being slow and sluggish and not focusing. So I'm presuming that's the weather doing that. So I'm hugging it at the moment and hoping it warms up and starts working. With the sun now fully up and my camera warmed up at least a little, I looked out on the small group of ducks in front of me that had found a small bit of the pool that wasn't frozen. These ducks were made up of primarily our more common winter visitors, the widgeon and the teal. One of the reasons we'd come here is because last year there was a very rare duck here, and we'd heard it had returned, although it had been showing pretty sporadically. This stunning duck from Asia is a Baikal teal, and here's some footage from last year. But after a very cold and pretty lengthy search amongst the ducks, we couldn't track it down, so we headed out further into the reserve. We walked along a path alongside a reed bed that looks over on the huge area of flooded marsh, and we were soon able to spot some birds of prey, the first being this lovely male marsh harrier that flew across at a distance. The second being a kestrel that was hovering over the marsh hunting for its next meal. Walking further along the reed bed, I was really hoping to see that flock of bearded tits again, so we could tick them off our year list. We did see some small long-tailed birds, but these turned out to be long-tailed tits. It was about this time that we heard some news about another bird that we'd come to the area specifically to see. Hey folks, one of the birds that we were looking for this weekend, the least sandpiper, has been seen. It's about 35 minutes drive away, so we're hot-footing it now to a place I don't think I can pronounce right. Sturt marshes, I don't know. Correct me if you like. We'll see you there shortly. Stick with us. We headed on the frozen path back towards the van. When we got there, we turned the heater all the way up and headed 35 minutes towards the coast. When we arrived, the car park was nearly full. The news of this rare American wader must have gained some attention. Hey folks, we're here at the wetlands place that I can't pronounce, looking for at least Sandpiper.
And it's freezing still.
And it's still absolutely bitterly cold.
Hopefully we have no phone calls from home saying the snow's really deep.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that one. We don't have to rush home quick or anything. But yeah, we're looking for it. This least Sandpiper was showing earlier and apparently it's flown off. But yesterday it did that and came back. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping we find it, so stick with us. Hot-footing it directly to the hide where the least Sandpiper had last been seen. It was just over half a mile to the hide, and on the walk we passed various birds standing on ice, including moorhens and a pair of mallard that looked a bit confused by the whole situation. We finally got near to the hide with only one mishap, with Kaylee nearly slipping over on the ice, so we took the last little bit very carefully. Upon arriving at the hide, there were plenty of birders there and a few we recognised. One birder, Sean, told us that the white-rumped sandpiper had previously been showing well, but then flew off into the distance with another small wader, the Little Stint. A little discouraged, we found a seat in the hide and scanned the area in front of us to see what else was there. While scanning through the groups of ducks roosting and the dunlin feeding amongst them, we heard some exciting noises. The least Sandpiper had returned. It had flown back in without its little stint friend. We were immediately struck on how small this bird is, and after some research we discovered this is the smallest wading bird in the world, with adults ranging from 13 to 15 centimetres, which is about the same size as a robin. This species breed in the northernmost part of Canada and North America, migrating south in the winter. This individual has ended up somewhat out of its range. Regardless, it seemed pretty comfortable, busily feeding amongst the larger dunlin. We watched it for some time, feeding along a mud bank next to some water, eventually flying off to another area of mud. What an incredible little wader and great to see, also a lifer for both of us. Whilst we were here, we picked up some other birds for our year list, including a very distant avocet that was feeding, a not so distant meadow pipit that came and sat on a post directly in front of us to preen, and a duck species that seemed pretty numerous here, the shoveler. Well, it's safe to say this trip was well worth its while. Success. We got it.
We met one of our subscribers.
And we met one of our subscribers, Simon. It was nice to meet you, buddy. We got here and the Sandpiper wasn't here, and then we bumped into another of our friends, birding friends, Sean, who said, oh, it's been up and down here, and then it showed up almost immediately and showed really nicely walking along like a mud bank next to the water. So we've got great views and awesome. We stuck around hoping the little stint that we'd been showing with it would show up, but that didn't, which is a shame, so we're not getting that on the year list yet. But stick with us, we're going to move on now, I'm not sure where. Let's see. We headed back to the van once more, passing some bird feeders en route. Around the feeders there were some small birds, including house sparrows and a large flock of goldfinch like this wonderfully handsome individual. But now it was time to get back to the van, put the heater on full again and head to our next destination. This time, RSPB Ham Wall, and a duck species we won't see because Kaylee's jinxed. Hello, we're at Ham Wall RSPB, still in Somerset. There's been a few birds seen here today, including a ringneck duck. We've just walked past where it has been seen and it's not there.
You won't see it because I'm here.
Yeah, she thinks she's a bad omen for seeing ringneck ducks. Other birds get seen here though. They've had bearded reedling and also glossy ibis here in previous days, so we're going to have a mooch round and see what we do find, so stick with us. After the initial scan and no show from the ringneck duck, we headed down the path towards the other viewing areas. En route, seeing other birds for our year list, including blackbirds, great tits, and in the distance on some water, a pair of little grebe. We continued further down the path to a platform that looks over a large area of wetland and reed beds. This is usually pretty busy for birds, but today, not so much. We did see a few cormorant drying off, and we did pick up a little egret for our year list. As we were about to leave this area, Kaylee spotted a bird of prey flying in the distance over the reed bed. This appeared to be a female marsh harrier who flew along the reed bed and then went down into it, flushing a male marsh harrier. As we looked on, we saw 2 other marsh harriers, these birds flying low over the reed bed. What an amazing sight. And although I would have been happy to watch these birds for longer, we were getting very cold stood still, so walked a little bit further around the reserve to some other viewing screens. And these did pick up some other species for our year list, including the extremely common and noisy coot. These were here in enormous numbers. Another quite common duck here was the tufted duck. Another lovely species of duck we were able to pick up here was the wonderful gadwall. This handsome male was feeding on the side of the reed bed. Arriving at another screen, we got a nice surprise in the shape of a very close great white egret. Although this and the other 2 species of egret we get in the UK are becoming more and more common, I still think this species is amazing, and this individual was super confiding. But now it was time to move on, and before we went I wanted to have one last look for that ringneck duck. But unfortunately, after a bit of a search, we couldn't find it. I wonder if Kaylee is really a bad omen with this species. Hey folks, we're at Ham Wall. We've had a look round. We couldn't find the ringneck duck that's supposed to be here, unfortunately. Kaylee, as far as this species goes, is a bit of a jinx for seeing. So I'm going to blame her. Sorry, babe.
It's fine, I don't mind.
We did see a few cool things here. We got both little and great white egret.
Just need cattle egret.
Just need cattle egret now for the trio of egrets. Anyway, we're going to head back now as it's getting into the afternoon, back to RSPB Greylake where we started the day, in the hope that the Baikal teal may show up. It hasn't yet, so fingers crossed. A short drive brought us back to where we started the day at RSPB Greylake, and now it was well into the afternoon. Hoping to pick up on some of the species I'd missed on camera this morning, we headed out again into this fantastic reserve, almost immediately finding another species for our year list, an overwintering chiffchaff. I can't believe how many of this species we've seen this winter. Walking on a slightly different path towards the hide, we saw water rail again, although I didn't get them on film this time, and a flock of Greylake geese coming into land. And when we got there, we looked out onto the scene in front of us. There were a few more ducks than previously earlier in the day. There were good numbers of widgeon sat on the mud bank, and some teal, some on the bank amongst the widgeon and some stood roosting on the ice. As we began to lose the light, we started to see birds flying over to roost and some raptors hunting. The first being this lovely barn owl that was in the distance. I struggled a little bit getting footage as the barn owl would disappear behind the reed bed. We did get a flyover from a grey heron, but we soon spotted something bigger than that. Something we don't see too often, the common crane. There was 4 of them in flight that were flying away from us, eventually after a while landing far in the distance. And although I was super happy to see this amazing species, things started to get even better. We caught up with a species I was unable to get on camera that morning due to the low light, the merlin. This individual that looks like a youngster or a female, please correct me if you know, was happily sat on a broken reed on the mud bank in front of us. Now, if any of you are regular viewers of our channel, you'll know that this, our smallest bird of prey, caused me a few issues last year. It took me until about November to get footage of this wonderful little predator. So we were over the moon to get it so early in the year. And although we had been searching for the rare Baikal teal and not found it, we weren't really that disappointed because we'd seen loads of other really cool birds. By this time though, it was getting really dark. Kaylee had already gone back to the van to warm up, and I was getting cold and pretty hungry. Hey folks, no Baikal teal I'm afraid, although having spoken to people here, it can be pretty elusive. Regardless, it's been really good. I've had barn owl, cranes in the distance. The merlin made a better show than this morning, so excellent. And we also got the least sandpiper early, which was a lifer, so brilliant. What a good day. Right, off to the van now. I am ready for dinner. What are you making?
Nice hot chilli in the snow.
It's snowing outside, and we're making a chilli to try and warm ourselves up. It's freezing. The following morning we woke up to a warmer but wetter day. Hey folks, back at RSPB Greylake, and a little bit warmer this morning, although very wet. It's raining, and it's been really raining overnight, so the floor is muddy and horrible. Also, it's apparently been snowing up in North Wales where we're from, so we might have to rush off later to get the girls. Regardless, we're here now, so we're going to try and get as many species as we can that we didn't get yesterday. So stick with us, let's see what we find. On the path to the hide, I had another flyover from the cranes, this time flying towards me, giving me amazing views of them in flight. This species is far from common in this country, with only about 80 breeding pairs. But thankfully, with the help of some conservation activities, the numbers are slowly increasing. Now back to our final search for the Baikal teal. And when we arrived at the hide, there was loads more ducks than the previous day. The only issue though, for us, as far as scanning to try and find the Baikal teal, the ducks were spread out over a massive area, and loads of ducks were flying in and out all the time, this making for quite a challenge. Yet, we took the challenge up and sat there for a while scanning through all of the bird life in front of us, only stopping to look at this wonderful water rail that was being uncharacteristically showy and not really very shy, feeding out in the open on a marshy area next to the hide. Although today the water rail wasn't dealing with ice, we were dealing with the rain. It had got really heavy now, so we continued to stay under the shelter of the hides. It was quite a challenge scanning through the ever-moving groups of ducks in front of us, but we did pick out some other birds amongst them, like this snipe, if you can see it amongst the mud and reeds in front of us, and this lone black-tailed godwit which was preening amongst a group of roosting ducks. While scanning, I did pick up another species of duck for our year list, and one of my favourites too, this very handsome male pintail that was preening in the distance amongst some widgeon. It was about this time I got another nice surprise. I refound the merlin. This time the poor wet little bird of prey was sat on an area of grass in the middle of the water. Upon inspection, I don't think this is the same individual as we'd seen the previous night, as this looks like a paler bird. Regardless, it was lovely to see. It stayed on the bank for a while in the rain, occasionally having a bit of a shake to loosen some of the water and constantly looking around. Eventually, it did fly off, being replaced by a couple of wading birds and another species we needed for our year list, the ruff. Just as we were about to give up, I did hear a familiar sound in the reed bed near us. It was the sound of a bearded tit, and I got a very brief view of a female as she flew off. But brief footage is still footage, so it's being counted. Fantastic. Unfortunately though, we'd failed to find the Baikal teal. Hopefully it'll stick around for a bit longer, so we may get another chance. It was now time though to head to the van and towards home, but with one stop en route, and this time to a sewage treatment works at Compton Dando near Bristol. The reason for the visit to this slightly unsavoury location is to find a bird we can't count on our year list, as it's a subspecies, but one we've not seen before, the Siberian Chiffchaff. And strangely, sewage treatment work seemed to attract a lot of birds, somewhat due to the process warming up the air around it and also enticing insects, which in turn attracts the smaller birds. And although quickly pointed out by Kaylee, we were stood in a bush in front of a vat of, well, you know what, there were plenty of birds around us. There was dunnock feeding on the ground and goldcrest in the trees above us. And feeding on the side of the vat, or I don't know quite what it's called, in front of us, there were some birds picking off the insects, including a pied wagtail and also a wren. As time was running out, Kaylee spotted an active small bird that was feeding in the trees at the opposite side of the sewage works. Eventually, when I was able to get a camera on it, it was a chiffchaff. Not sure if it was our Siberian one though. So we continued to watch, and eventually a chiffchaff came onto the roof of one of the structures in front of us. Unfortunately though, it wasn't our Siberian chiffchaff. This was a normal one. But it was soon joined by the Siberian Chiffchaff. In this little video you can see both of the birds together. The bird closest to us being our normal overwintering chiffchaff, and the one behind it being the Siberian Chiffchaff. This subspecies appearing much paler, and in my opinion a little bit stockier. Although this isn't a lifer, I'm going to count it as a subspecies lifer, but we can't add it to the year list unfortunately. Regardless, an amazing bird to see, and a lovely way to end our adventure.
Where are we? To all the nice places.
Where are we, babe?
At a sewage works again.
At a sewage works in a place called Compton Dando near Bristol. We've just seen a Siberian Chiffchaff, which is cool. Yeah. It was like not at all like the other Chiffchaff it was with. It was
so much lighter,
far paler, with a really prominent eyebrow and quite dark on the edge of the wings. Absolutely gorgeous. So although we're like standing in front of a vat of sewage
and in a bush,
we've just got that bird. I don't know if I can count it because I think it's a subspecies, but really super nice to see and worth a trip on the way back.
We saw Goldcrest.
And we saw Goldcrest as well. Before Katie tells you it's my birthday,
it's his birthday.
I'm gonna say please like,
please subscribe,
and please press the notification bell. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully next time we'll not be at a sewage works.
You never know.
On the way home, we stopped at a service station and picked up another bird for our year list. This common gull that was picking up scraps in the car park. Cool. See you next time.